I have, yes. I've attended the events in Scotland before and thoroughly enjoyed them, to be perfectly honest. Well, I suppose my interest in the housing sector has predominantly been around supply and to a degree sales. And I'm conscious that BFT tends to focus much more on technical aspects, which are nonetheless still, I think, very informative. And also I've found them very good networking events for the different stakeholders that actually come along to these and have always been well attended. Yeah, what I'd like to really cover off in my session is my experiences, particularly over the best part of the last 20 years of looking into the house building sector from almost an external viewpoint, although an interested viewpoint, because having had a long career at Lloyd's Banking Group and focused very much on the new homes side of the industry, I obviously have had an opportunity to watch, particularly as that industry has evolved over the last best part of 20 years. What we have seen during that period of time is a rise of social media, consumer expectations changing, and some well publicised challenges around some of the perceived quality and finishing of new homes. And really, to that end, in my retirement, I am now involved on the board of the New Homes Quality Board, which is an organisation that's been created to look at the positioning of a new homes ombudsman service, a universal new homes code for the industry, and to look at how we can then help the industry through the New Homes Quality Board embrace the new homes code, the requirements obviously of and the expectations of consumers, and therefore the new homes ombudsman service, and to really take this opportunity to now demonstrate that actually, first of all, the industry does build a good product, and to also address where the failures do occur in a swift and timely fashion, to ensure that that any problems which may occur are dealt with quickly, and therefore any potential reaction from consumers is proportionate. Well, looking at the housing market in general, as opposed to just necessarily the new home sector, I suppose there hasn't been any real significant changes over that period of time. What I have seen is, from a financial side, is that the method of preparing and applying for mortgages, for underwriting mortgages, the technology that's used in that process has obviously come on leaps and bounds, is completely unrecognisable from the processes and systems which were used back in the 80s. So there's a very different approach from the mortgage market in particular as to how it presents mortgages and underwrites mortgages. We've seen various differences to the funding mechanisms, from traditional deposit-based mechanisms from building societies, to then being able to raise wholesale money on money markets. And of course, we've seen a significant change in the landscape of participants. A lot of the more familiar names of yesteryear just do not exist now, or have been absorbed within the major banks and building societies that are now obviously commonplace on the high street. So I think that's probably been the biggest change. As far as the desire for people to own their own home, the style of those homes, we have seen not significant change in that period of time, but of course affordability does have an impact, and the type of property that a person can afford tends to then dictate the type of properties which are then delivered. Well, I think the arrival of COVID-19 and the impact of the initial lockdown in March last year had a huge impact on the market itself. And some of that was just obviously on people taking the necessary precautions and looking after themselves and others. I mean, it was also, I suppose, driven by the fact that there was some uncertainty as to exactly how the market would function. The respective governments made it quite clear that they wanted the housing market to stay open, but how it was going to function in a safe manner was fairly difficult to see in the early days. It didn't take long before we started to see the ability to market properties digitally, which has been a huge step forward, which I think would have evolved in time anyhow, but COVID has certainly accelerated that process. The valuation of properties for a while, particularly when social distancing and lockdown was at its peak, we saw a subtle move towards desktop valuations and automated valuation models for mortgage purposes. And these were sensible approaches where the risk of the actual individual transaction permitted valuation to be assessed in that way. So I think we did see some adaptation, some changes within the market, which actually were designed to keep the market moving, albeit at a far slower pace than we saw before. I do think the biggest impact has been the digitisation of the market, and how we've seen a lot of house builders and developers looking at their online capability, looking at being able to promote their properties online using obviously all sorts of different technology of walkthroughs and so on, clear graphics, good site plans, all things which actually a customer and potential buyer sitting locked down in their house and with the ability to go online actually can see a very attractive image of the properties which they may wish to buy. And of course, what we have seen is a drive in the needs of the market as a result of COVID. A number of people have obviously sat in their homes and have thought, actually, it's maybe time for a change. We've also seen, of course, the increase in household through the birth of children as a result of lockdown beginning to come through. So again, creating additional demand. We've seen home working become very much the norm. And again, people who have the ability to then say, well, actually, we could do with another room or some more outdoor space. And inevitably there will be relationships which have failed as a result of COVID and that period of enforced lockdown, and therefore we're seeing the division of households as well, which again can create additional demand within the marketplace. So there has definitely been a COVID impact across the market. I believe we are already seeing an increase in house sales and house transactions or demands and inquiries for housing. What is interesting is that the profile of the people who are now looking are actually different to what we experienced pre-COVID. Particularly in the new homes market, there was a strong demand from the first-time buyer market, a market which was fueled by obviously the availability of Help to Buy across the three GB nations, and therefore that has helped people get onto the housing ladder. One of the aspects we saw from COVID is that whilst we still have Help to Buy with us, that mortgage lenders, with a view to protecting how they process mortgage business, have had to reduce some of the flow of business, and therefore we saw a reduction in loans to values that were available, and of course that has a consequence. But what we have seen is a number of the people who are either looking to move because they require some extra space, because they see home working as a longer term option, or require a wee bit more garden space because again they feel that there's an opportunity to spend more time at their home. What we are seeing from that group is that that's attracting people who would not necessarily have been in the market to the extent that they are just now. So COVID has very much been the catalyst to bring forward a number of potential buyers who probably would have got round to moving at some point in the future, but that seems to have been accelerated by the impacts of COVID. So whilst the first-time buyers are maybe not as prevalent in the market currently, what we are seeing is that reduction is being adequately filled by other people who, but I say, are probably moving before they would necessarily have considered moving purely because of the circumstances they've experienced during COVID, which have necessarily been the tipping point for convincing them that it's time to move. Well, I think NHBC plays a actually vital role and has done for the best part of 8 decades. The reason I say that is that, as we know, and if we go back to when the NHBC was created, that again, similar to some of the noise we hear today, that there were some challenges around the quality of homes, and NHBC very much came to the fore, and as an organisation have evolved during its lifetime into very much the leading focus on new homes quality. I appreciate that much of that is around looking not only at the underwriting risk of obviously any insurance risk which NHBC would be holding as an insurer, but also with the best intentions of looking at helping the market improve and learning through different technologies and different approaches to building and so on. One of the areas that I can recognise in NHBC, having worked for a major financer, is that there's an element of responsibility that goes with the scale of the organisation and the size of the market share. And therefore, there is a very sensible and prudent pace around its ability to change. Some may criticise that as a lack of agility. I don't see that at all. I see that as a responsibility which NHBC have to take because of their position in the market. They are the leaders in the market, and that leadership does require responsibility because others potentially will follow, and therefore you want to make sure you get it right. So I think that NHBC has evolved and has helped shape the market during its period and continues to do so. And for that, I think we should be very grateful. I'm looking forward to an opportunity, having spent an enormous amount of time, like I'm sure many of those who will be involved in BFT in lockdown, is having some variety to being able to do something just a wee bit different, and hopefully being able to offer a view on my take on how the housing market is currently playing out, and I think what the opportunities that will present to us in the future.